Now, the rest of the story. Once upon a time, there was a stretch of Coney Island boardwalk that ran all the way from Feldman's Astroland to Steeplechase Park, a wooden plank pathway prowled by a Stilt Walker named Archie. He was an absurd-appearing creature in his pink and white costume, with a striped top hat and a cutaway jacket and enormous bell-bottom trousers concealing his stilts, and the absurdity was exaggerated by his tremendous height, some 16 feet from his head to the ground, and at first distant glimpse it just might have appeared that a real giant had invaded Coney Island. Anyway, Archie had been a stilt walker for as long as anybody could remember. At only 6 1/2, he had joined a famous troupe of acrobats called the Penders. They were more than acrobats, really. They tumbled and danced like Russian Cossacks. And when the Penders traveled abroad, Archie went with them. And in no time, the tiny boy had become professionally proficient in every aspect of the trade, and especially as a stilt walker. In those days, many theatrical stages sloped toward the audience, which made stilt walking all the more arduous. Archie's stilts were so tall that a ladder was needed to place him on top of them. And yet his skill and his inclination was such that after a few years' flirtation with formal education, he returned to the Penders at age 14 and accompanied them, as he had in childhood, to New York. Archie's happiest experience was one 3-month tour of the eastern states with Ringling Brothers' Barnum and Bailey Circus. He was 17 by then, a seasoned performer by then, but he would never outgrow the intoxication of the bright colors and the brass bands and the sawdust and the grease paint. It's hard to tell when things started going downhill. Maybe it was after he took that solo job just walking through New York's Times Square. No longer embraced by the joyful circus atmosphere, Archie found himself stranded atop 10-foot pegs in a silly get-up, bedraped with a mammoth advertising sandwich board, barking out promotions through a megaphone, beleaguered by bands of young hoodlums who mocked him and otherwise sought to interfere. From there, Archie went to Coney Island, which he liked even less, and yet which, for the sake of feeding himself, he endured. You could have seen him most any day, smiling through the frustration and the self-deprecation, putting on the happy face that he'd practiced through years of professional crowd-pleasing, stalking the boardwalk between Feldman's and Steeplechase, down in the depths, 16 feet in the air. But the time came when enough was enough, is the stuff of which show business history is made. Some say it was a carnival clown named Don Barclay who, feeling sorry for Archie, told him it was time to move on to better things. But now I hope that you will not forget a young stilt walker named Archie Leach, who could have contented himself with Barnum and Bailey, who might have reconciled himself to Coney Island, but who instead climbed down from his acrobat's perch and ascended to the pinnacle of another profession as dashing, dapper Cary Grant. For now you know the rest of the story.
And now the rest of the story. Archibald Archie Leach was born on January 18, 1904, into a lower middle-class family in Bristol, England. His father, Elias James Leach, worked as a heat press operator in a garment factory. His mother, Elsie Maria Leach, worked as a seamstress. His parents' first son, John, died from tuberculosis 4 years before Archie was born. His parents struggled to cope with John's death, even after the birth of Archie. Archie's dad tried to drown his sadness with alcohol and became withdrawn from everyone, even Archie. His mother often suffered with bouts of deep depression where she was unable to function. When Archie's mother was not suffering from depression, she clung to Archie. She filled Archie's head with hopes and dreams of one day being rich and famous. When Archie was 9 years old, he returned home from school to find his mother missing. He asked his father where his mother had gone. His father simply and vaguely replied that she had gone on holiday. Sounds like a very British thing to do, go on holiday. His father gave no other details, and Archie knew not to press the matter. But every so often, Archie would ask his father when his mother would return. Archie wondered if he was responsible for driving his mother away. Finally, his father told Archie that his mother had died. Archie was stunned. There had been no funeral and no grieving family members to console him or his father. No one mentioned her at all. She was just gone, and Archie was crushed. Archie was not what teachers would call a good student. He often acted out and was indifferent to his studies. He had mood swings and was what some people called prickly. Archie later described his early childhood with a hint of pain. He described the paucity of my own youth. It lacked many advantages. Like his father, he was vague and evasive about the details. Archie was drawn to the theater at a young age. When he could come up with a price of admission, he would go to the Saturday afternoon matinee. Despite his indifference toward studying, Archie was granted a scholarship to attend Bristol's Fairfield Academy, where he worked behind the scenes on school drama productions. One day, he went to the Bristol Hippodrome, one of the largest theaters outside of London, to see a live performance. Archie was spellbound. In an interview, he reminisced about his experience at the Hippodrome. He asked rhetorically, what other life could there be but that of an actor? But times were bad at the Leach home. Archie's father was often too intoxicated to properly care for him. Archie ran away from home and joined Bob Pinder's vaudevillian troupe. Archie had enjoyed his new life for all of 10 days when his father found him and dragged him back home. But a year and a half later, Archie rejoined the Pinder's troupe. In 1920, when Archie was just 16 years old, he sailed with the Pinders from Southampton to New York. Archie's New York debut was in an elaborate stage show in a cast consisting of more than 1,000 actors and actresses at the New York Hippodrome. It was in the summer of 1922 when Archie worked as that Stilt Walker at New York City's Coney Island. For 6 more years, Archie performed at a host of vaudeville shows. Then, in 1928, he graduated to Broadway. He played Reggie Phipps in the musical Boom Boom. 4 years later, in 1932, Archie appeared in his first film, a 10-minute short called Singapore Sue. Archie's part was uncredited, but B.P. Schulberg, the studio head of Paramount Pictures, saw the short and he noticed something about Archie. There was something there. Schulberg offered Archie a contract with the stipulation that Archie Leach change his name to something with more of a box office ring. Archie said in later life, I pretended to be somebody I wanted to be, and I finally became that person, or he became me, or we met at some point. It's a relationship. Through lots of practice, he somewhat Americanized his British accent. He had always dressed nicely, at his mother's insistence, but now he dressed impeccably. He mastered etiquette and manners. He was kind, polite, and courteous. Now his alter ego just needed that good name. After some consideration, Archie chose the first name for his alter ego from a part he had once played in a stage production, and the last name from a list of one-syllable names prepared by the studio. He went to work right away and appeared in 7 films which were released in that same year, 1932. Talk about fast production. Pretty soon, people all over the world knew Archie Leach as Cary Grant. Now, in about 1938, several years after Archie had become Cary Grant, he learned that his mother had not died as his father had told him. Archie's mother had not gone on holiday. She was overcome by clinical depression, and Archie's father had had her committed to a local mental institution. That's right, a mental institution. To his surprise, Archie learned that his mother was still in that mental institution. Archie was finally reunited with his mother after all those years. He later said of their meeting, I was known to most of the world by sight and by name, yet not to my mother. By the time of their reunion, Archie's alter ego had achieved fame and fortune, the dream his mother had filled him with when he was a child. Archie and his mother remained close for the rest of her life. Once, while Archie and his mother were driving somewhere, she looked over at his graying hair. She remarked that he should start dyeing his hair. "Why?" he asked. "You should," she replied. "It makes me look so old." They both broke out into laughter. Archie's mother was 89 years old at the time. Then, in his 80s, some 2 decades after he retired from acting in films, one reporter described Cary Grant as having thick, snow-white hair, lilting, affected accent, twinkling brown eyes, dimpled chin, and a tan face that should be carved on Mount Rushmore. He is terminally debonair, utterly witty, and smoother than a Brandy Alexander. Another reporter described Cary Grant as immortal, an ideal of sophistication, forever. On November 29, 1986, Archibald Leach died from a stroke while preparing for a theater appearance. Cary Grant starred in many notable films, including my favorites, His Girl Friday, The Philadelphia Story, and the Alfred Hitchcock classic, North by Northwest. Do you have a favorite Cary Grant film? Now, Cary Grant was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, but he never won. I'm surprised by that. And in 1970, the Academy of Motion Pictures presented him with an honorary Oscar for his unique mastery of the art of screen acting. Women adored Cary Grant. Men wanted to be, well, not Archibald, Archie Leach. Everyone, including Archie, wanted to be Cary Grant. I'm Brad Dison. Thanks for watching. And now you know the rest of the story.